This is what the review on this Dial King 103.9 FM. 2:19 p.m. Nigerian time in the studios of King 103.9 FM, and of course, it's a beautiful Friday afternoon. Like I said, you know what comes up every Friday afternoon, 2:15 p.m. to 3 p.m. Nigerian time on this Dial King FM. Yeah, it's what the review once again. It's time to bring you all the news that made the headlines throughout the course of the week outside of the shores of Nigeria. It's time to break down the news for you, give you an analytical perspective, help you understand what's been happening in the world. Yeah, my name is Ajibola Samuel. I'm your regular host on the show, and of course, I do this every Friday afternoon once again to 15 p.m. Nigerian time to 3 p.m. Nigerian time. Yeah, time is fast spent already. Let's delve straight into the various stories and news that made the headlines throughout the course of this week outside of the shores of Nigeria. And of course, let's start breaking them down. Once again, this is what the review on this Dial King 103.9, and you are listening to the voice of Ajibola Samuel. Without further ado, we've always started from the African continent, and once again today we'll be starting from the African continent before, of course, we go to other part of the world to bring you the news that we got from there. And starting from the African continent once again, this time around I'm starting from a small country in East Africa, which is Uganda. Yeah, Uganda confirms fresh Ebola outbreak and of course recorded one death, and as at the last count, about 8 cases were actually recorded. Yeah, the Uganda Ministry of Health confirmed a resurgence of Ebola virus following the death of a 24-year-old man in central Uganda. The health ministry said the victim, a resident of Gambamono village in Bende district, about 147 kilometers away from the capital city of Uganda, which is Kampala, had exhibited symptoms of the virus before he died. It was gathered that while the health minister, Jane Ruth Aceng, was in New York, senior Ministry of Health staff rushed to Mubende to investigate after an unknown number of residents succumbed to what was initially reported as a strange illness on Monday. Well, quoting the health ministry right now, Uganda confirms an outbreak of Ebola virus disease in Bende district, Uganda. The confirmed case is a 24-year-old male, a resident of Gambamno village of Madudu sub-county in Bende district, presented with an Ebola virus disease symptoms and later succumbed. That was according to the statement released by the health ministry. Okay, we will try leave the studios right now and go to Uganda, listen to the statement of the health ministry, and of course listen to one of the representatives of the health ministry help us understand what actually transpired in Uganda earlier this week when the outbreak was declared.
This is to notify you about a confirmed Ebola outbreak in Mubende district. On the 15th of September 2022, one suspected case of viral hemorrhagic fever was identified and isolated in Mubende Regional Referral Hospital. The patient was a 24-year-old male who lived in Ngabano village of Madudu sub-county in Mubende district. We are right now gathering more information on the possible source of infection. We call upon the population now across the country, but more specifically Mubende sub-region, to remain calm but vigilant and report any case
second time this happened in that particular country after it happened back in 2019. Yeah, Uganda Health Ministry declared an outbreak in the central districts, like I said earlier on Tuesday. So far, 7 cases, including one death, have been confirmed to have contracted the Sudan Ebola virus. The WHO said in a statement referring to a relatively rare strain of the virus. Yeah, according to developments, 43 contacts have been identified, and 10 people suspected to have caught the virus are receiving treatment at the regional referral hospital in Ubende, it said. Okay, we'll take another quick trip outside of the studio right now, and we'll try to make sense of what's happening in Uganda.
Earlier, we got information regarding the community deaths, which our epidemiologists went on the ground to ascertain. Unfortunately, they were not confirmed, they were buried. However, the pattern is it was within the same family, 3 adults and 3 children. I want to assure the public and the international community that Uganda is well known for handling epidemics, and therefore we have capacity, we have the skills, we have what it takes to contain this Ebola. And so we want to ask you to stay calm and let you know that we are going to handle this epidemic precisely.
In background, the epidemic appears to have started around the beginning of September, when people started dying in a small village in the sub-camp of Bodimana. This current outbreak happens just at the end of we think, of the COVID pandemic, which we think we successfully managed, and much of the infrastructure that we used both for COVID, we are quickly repurposing it to Ebola. But also of note, just as Patrick was speaking, we have significant capacity built across within the country for detection and also be able to galvanize community support and response. So we think that using what we've done before should be able to appropriately respond to this current outbreak.
Yeah, of course, you listen to the representative of the Health Ministry in Uganda coming out to tell people not to panic, that Uganda, of course, have handled cases like this before, and of course, they have enough logistics and resources on the ground to deal with other issues like this, and of course, this current outbreak. Well, if you have been following this particular program, you would have heard, or if you have been monitoring the news, that the Democratic Republic of Congo also, earlier last month, declared an outbreak of Ebola virus in their own country too. That was the 15th time Ebola virus is actually going to be declared as an epidemic in that particular country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when that announcement was made back last month in the Democratic Republic of Congo, other countries that were actually close to the Democratic Republic of Congo, like Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, actually notified their health authorities, and they were putting things in place to try as much as possible to make sure that Ebola does not actually creep into their country. But as it stands right now, there are 2 main strains of this particular virus, the Ebola virus disease, the one from Zaire, which is the one that is usually found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course the one that is the Sudan strain. Well, according to what they have in Uganda right now, it is recorded that so far 7 cases, including one death, have been confirmed to have contracted the Sudan Ebola virus, which proves to us that the strain that they are battling in Uganda right now is probably not from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course they are battling the one from the Sudan strain of Ebola virus. Okay, we talk about that also, and of course we help you understand. And talking about vaccination, it is reported that the current vaccination that have gone on in that particular country was the vaccination that worked against the Zaire strain in once again, 8 cases have been reported and one death so far in the Mubende province in Uganda. Of course, also in other Eastern African countries, East African states have actually put themselves on alert over the Ebola virus disease in Uganda. Eastern African countries have issued alert after announcement of an outbreak of deadly Ebola virus in Uganda. Neighboring Tanzania said it had placed surveillance teams at key entry points, including airports and border points. Health Permanent Secretary Abel Makube actually told newsmen that the teams were screening all people that are coming to the country. Also in Kenya, the Kenya Health Ministry said it had urged county authorities, especially in border areas, to be very vigilant and enhance surveillance. It said response teams have been activated to screen people who might be at risk, including travelers and healthcare workers. It also urged the public to be highly cautious while visiting Uganda and, of course, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Leaving Kenya in Somalia, the Health Ministry said it was collaborating with the Ministry of Transport and Aviation and, of course, other relevant agencies to actually help stop the disease from spreading into the country. It said it was coordinating with the World Health Organization to start necessary preparations and response measures such as screening of travelers, etc. On Monday, Uganda health authorities, like I said earlier, announced the death of a 24-year-old man who died as a result of the Ebola virus. Okay, you are listening to World Review on this dial, King 103.9 FM. This is the voice of Ajibola Samuel. You probably want to put a face to the voice you are hearing in the studios right now. You can go watch this live on our Facebook page, King FM 1039 Ibadan. You write it together as one word, no space. And of course, you get to see me do this live right now in the studios of King 103.9 FM. Yeah, moving forward quickly, still in Uganda and of course still in the African continent, Uganda health authorities said an outbreak of the skin condition, scabies, has affected about 25,000 people in the eastern district region of that country, in the eastern district near the capital Kampala. Well, in case you don't know, scabies is an infestation of tiny mites in the skin. It is contagious between people. Yeah, head of health service in Palisa district, Geoffrey Maleka, told newsmen that those affected were from fishing villages in Kasodo and Uluki areas. Locals first alerted officials to the outbreak 2 months ago after noticing several cases of severe skin condition that causes itching and rashness. Officials blame communal practices like bathing in the lake for the rising infections, where there is poor hygiene. Yeah, villagers are now being encouraged to stop communal sharing, bathe twice a day with soap, and wash bedding and dry them under the sun. Ironing of clothes is also recommended to those that can afford it. So in Uganda right now, they are not only battling Ebola virus. Unfortunately, they are also battling what is known as scabies. And of course, scabies has been it's one of the things that they've been battling even before the Ebola virus outbreak actually surfaced in that particular country. Okay, she will take a quick trip outside of the studio once again and help to understand what actually transpired as far as scabies is concerned in Uganda, or she will just move on. Time is fast spent already. Outside flights to 35 p.m. Nigerian time. Okay, let's leave that. Still talking about matters related to virus. Right now, I'm in Ghana, and of course, Ghana just a couple of months ago declared the outbreak of a virus in their own country. But right now, they have declared that Marburg virus, which of course, they declared an outbreak of it just a couple of months ago, have officially ended after about 42 days that no new case was actually discovered in that particular country. Okay, we leave it at that. We take a quick trip outside of the studio and we get to listen to a spokesperson of the Ghana Health Service help us understand what actually happened with Marburg virus.
Marburg is officially over. Where in this country is Marburg disease at highest risk? So there's a study going to see maybe this more than that. These are areas we need to continue watching. And so we are not just leaving it there, we are making sure that we are more better prepared and also prevent any further outbreak. Our resilience disease surveillance system has once again demonstrated.
Okay, Marburg virus being officially declared over in Ghana. Okay, we pray and of course we hope that God helps in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda also to overcome the latest outbreak of Ebola virus in their country. Moving forward quickly, still in African continent. Yeah, the war that has been going on in the northern part of Ethiopia, between Ethiopia, of course, Addis Ababa, and of course the TPLF, the Tigrayan People Liberation Front. Yeah, well, there was a 5-month truce that started earlier this year, but unfortunately the truce has been broken and the fights have actually resumed in the northern part of Ethiopia. The Tigrayan region, the TPLF actually came out sometimes last week to tell the world that they are ready for negotiation, but on the other hand, the Ethiopian government, well, also said they are ready for a negotiation, but they insisted that they would not, be a participant of a negotiation that, of course, the African Union oversees. And fighting, like I said, have resumed. The Ethiopian region have been accused by the Tigrayan region that they have been escalating the war, and of course that Eritrean troops, which are neighbors to Tigray, have also joined Ethiopia to launch offensive on Tigray. Well, a new UN report was actually released earlier this week, and it accuses Ethiopia of different atrocities that they are carrying out in Tigray. A new report by the Commission of Human Rights Experts on Utopia indicates that the Ethiopian government is responsible for ongoing crimes against humanity in the northern Tigray region. The experts detailed what it referred to as credible information of large-scale killings committed by Ethiopian National Defense Force that targeted Tigrayan men and boys of fighting age. Investigators says there is also evidence that starvation is being deployed as a weapon of war. The report says human rights violations have been committed by all sides since fighting erupted nearly 2 years ago. In a statement, Commission Chair Kari Bati Murungi described the humanitarian situation in Tigray as shocking, both in terms of scale and duration. The government is actually, as at the point of filing this report, they didn't respond to the allegation. A Tigrayan spokesman said they had always maintained that Ethiopia government was responsible for crime against humanity in the region, and of course Tigrayan authorities have welcomed the report. Well, later, earlier this week, the Ethiopian government came out to lambast that particular report, saying it is not substantiated and of course it is very, very biased. Okay, our time is fast spent. I still got more news from the African continent. Well, some couple of counties and the country suffered flooding, natural disasters, and of course some couple of other issues. Also, in some countries, protests going on. And well, time is fast spent. Let's leave the African continent. We've got quite a lot of things to talk about outside of the African continent. Well, war is brewing in Europe right now, and the world might just be knocking. World War III might be knocking on the door. I'm not saying that to scare you, actually. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, came out earlier this week to announce partial mobilization and, of course, strengthen the world and, of course, the Eurozone that is not afraid of a nuclear war. He's ready to go fully nuke if the West does not stop blackmailing the Russian name. Okay, before we go into that, let's talk about Donald Trump. Yeah, ever since Donald Trump ceased to be the president of the United States, ever since, he was ever since he handed over to Joe Biden, he's had to face series of legal battles and of course litigations. Of course, he's faced battles about his involvement in the January 6 riots that happened at the Capitol. He's faced issues of fraud, etc. Of course, recently he's had to deal with espionage act and of course the FBI search of his apartment in Mar-a-Lago, and of course recently the Attorney General of New York actually filed civil fraud lawsuits against Donald Trump, his kids, his children, and of course some of his businesses. Well, okay, to bring you the news, the New York State Attorney General filed a sweeping lawsuit on Wednesday against former President Donald Trump, 3 of his adult children, and of course the Trump Organization, alleging they were involved in an expansive fraud lasting over a decade that the former president used to enrich himself. Yeah, in more than a 200-page lawsuit, Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, a Democrat, well, I stress that, Letitia James, a Democrat, actually alleges the fraud touched all aspects of the Trump business, including his properties and golf courses. According to the lawsuits, the Trump Organization deceived lenders, insurance, and tax authorities by inflating the value of his properties using misleading appraisers. This conduct cannot be brushed aside and dismissed as some sort of good faith mistake. James, and that's Letitia James, said at a news conference in New York. Well, Trump and his children, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and of course Ivanka Trump, are named as defendants in the lawsuit. James said she believes states and criminal laws may have been violated and referred to matter of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and the Internal Revenue Office. Well, to cut the long story short, according to the New York Attorney General, they are actually filing a civil fraud case against Donald Trump, his organization, and of course some of his children, saying they inflated their net worth and of course some of the worth of their properties in order, to defraud some couple of people, including tax authorities, inland revenue agencies, and of course insurance, so that they will be able to evade some couple of things. And the accusation actually went on and on. Okay, they used to say, let's leave the studios right now and have to make sense of what is going on. Of course, as the lawsuit filed against Trump is concerned. We take a quick reversal of the studio and we get to listen to Letitia James, make this pronouncement.
Following a comprehensive 3-year investigation by my office, including witnesses, interviews with more than 65 witnesses, and review of millions of documents that were submitted by Mr. Trump and others, I am announcing that today we are filing a lawsuit against Donald Trump for violating the law. The complaint demonstrates that Donald Trump falsely inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself and to cheat the system, thereby cheating all of us. He did this with the help of the other defendants, his children, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump, and former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg and Trump Organization Controller Jeffrey McConney. Mr. Trump and the Trump Organization repeatedly and persistently manipulated the value of assets to induce banks to lend money to the Trump Organization on more favorable terms than would otherwise have been available to the company, to pay lower taxes, to satisfy continuing loan agreements, and to induce insurance companies to provide insurance coverage for higher limits and at lower premiums. His conduct was all in violation of Executive Law, Section 6312, which gives the Attorney General broad special powers to go after persistent and repeated fraud and illegality. As part of demonstrating illegality under that section of Law 6312, we show that they violated several state criminal laws, including falsifying business records, issuing false financial statements, insurance fraud, and engaging in a conspiracy to commit each of these state law violations.
Ladies and gentlemen, the voice of the New York's Attorney General, Ms. Letitia James, of course, filing the lawsuits against the former President of the United States, President Donald Trump, and of course against this organization and some of his children. Okay, still in the United States, before I leave the United States, let's take this piece of news also. Former Minneapolis police officer actually gets jail time for his involvement in the death of George Floyd. Yeah, a former Minneapolis police officer who pleaded guilty to a state charge of aiding and abetting in the killing of George Floyd was sentenced to 3 years in prison on Wednesday. Thomas Lane appeared via video link at his brief sentencing hearing in Hennepin County District Court from a federal prison in Colorado, where he is already serving a sentence of 2 years, 6 months after a jury found him guilty in February on federal charges of violating Floyd's civil rights. Yeah, Mr. Thomas Lane, a 39-year-old, was one of the 4 officers involved in the deadly arrest of George Floyd on the 25th day of the month of May 2020 outside a Minneapolis grocery store, where he was suspected of using counterfeit $20 bill to actually buy cigarettes. I'm sure you haven't forgotten that particular story. Lane's colleague Derek Chauvin, who is white, was captured in a bystander cell phone video kneeling on the neck of a handcuffed, dying George Floyd for more than 9 minutes. The video, if you haven't forgotten, actually sparked protests daily, and of course it's what led to the Black Lives Matter movement, and of course protests against racism and police brutality in cities across the United States. Well, a jury found Derek Chauvin guilty of unintentional second-degree murder, among other charges, at a state trial in 2021. And in case you don't know, he was sentenced to a 22.5-year imprisonment sentence. In July, Chauvin received a concurrent sentence of 21 years in prison on federal charges of violating George Floyd's civil rights. Well, Thomas Lane right now, who is also white, accepted a plea deal with the prosecutor from the Minnesota Attorney General office earlier this year. And as it stands right now, he has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. Okay, let's take a quick result out of the studio and get to listen to the proceedings of the court hearing. How it went down.
Mr. Lane, then, as to count 2, your guilty plea is accepted, and based on that plea, you're found guilty of aiding and abetting manslaughter in the second degree. Judgment of the court is that you are convicted of that offense. Count 1 is dismissed pursuant to the plea negotiation. You are sentenced to 36 months in prison with credit for 31 days already served. The PSI would fail to account for the 8 days he was in custody upon the initial charging. So the 31 days is correct. This is a mitigated durational departure. It is based on the plea agreement, your lesser role in the offense, and I base that on all of the video evidence that I watched during the State versus Chauvin trial, and your acceptance of responsibility. I'll just stop and note that I think it was a very wise decision for you to accept responsibility and move on with your life, even though the Floyd family has problems, and understandably so, problems moving on with their own lives, since we are still in process on 2 of the other defendants. And as they said, they might not ever be able to move on. The sentence will be concurrent with your federal sentence, and it will be served in a federal facility designated by the United States Bureau of Prisons. Provide a DNA sample is required by law, and register as a predatory offender if required by law. questions about the sentence?
Not from hearing.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, anything further from the state
No, Your Honor.
for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Wow, that was, the court proceedings actually, it happened over the video. The judge was actually, or the presiding judge was actually in a particular location, and of course Thomas Lane answered that particular or that hearing via video call, joining from the prison, and everything went smoothly. Of course, like I said earlier, the plea deal which he had filed was accepted, and as it stands right now, he got 3-year sentencing with the initial 2 years 6 months that is actually serving right now. Okay, living the United States of America, and this time around I'm in Europe, and of course conversations have been ongoing in the past about Russia launching referendum in 4 occupied areas of Ukraine, namely the Luhansk region, the Donetsk region, the Kherson region, and of course the Zaporizhia region. Well, finally, referendums have actually started. Voting has started in the referendum on the Zaporizhia region becoming a part of Russia as a constituent entity of the Russian Federation. So what Vladimir Putin and Russia did is that they gave the region the opportunity to actually decide if they want to be part of Ukraine or they want to be annexed by Russia. And once again, the regions include Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and of course Zaporizhia. Well, as it stands right now, voting is already underway in the referendum, and those 4 regions will decide if they want to be part of Ukraine or they want to be annexed, just like Crimea, and be part of Russia right now. Well, the conversation actually led to Putin coming out earlier this week to announce a partial mobilization and, of course, threatening nuclear retaliation in the escalation of Ukraine war. Yeah, Vladimir Putin announced a partial mobilization in Russia in a significant escalation that places the country's people and economy on a wartime footing. Well, in a highly anticipated televised address, Putin said Russia's first mobilization since the Second World War was a direct response to the dangers posed by the West, which wants to destroy, in quotes, our country, that is Russia, and he claimed the West had tried to turn Ukraine's people into cannon fodder. Quoting him right now, military service will apply only to citizens who are currently reserved, especially those who have served in the armed forces, have certain military professions and relevant experiences. Yeah, shortly after Putin's announcement, the country's defense ministry, Sergei Shoigu, said 300,000 Russians would be called up as part of the mobilization that would apply to those with previous military experience. We're quoting Vladimir Putin once again. He said, and I quote, "To those who allow themselves such statements regarding Russia, I want to remind you that our country has various means of destruction and separate components and unfortunately time is fast spent. Well, Vladimir Putin did threaten that if the West does not stop the blackmail that is happening against Russia right now, he, as the president of Russia, is not afraid to actually go full nuclear and, of course, deploy all the nuke in his possession and try as much as possible to turn this into an escalated war. But like I said earlier, voting have started in referendum in the 4 regions of Ukraine, in the Luhansk, the Donetsk, the Zaporizhia, and of course the Kherson region, to determine if the people and of course the citizens or the occupants of that particular region want to be part of Russia or they want to be part of Ukraine. We'll be monitoring proceedings from here and of course from King 103.9 FM. Trust us to actually keep you updated with various developments from that part. My name is Sajibola Samuel. It was a pleasure and of course same time, same station for another exciting edition of the show. Have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Stay safe out